USS Nautilus was the world's first operational nuclear-powered submarine. The vessel was the first submarine to complete a submerged transit of the North Pole on 3 August 1958. Sharing names with Captain Nemo's fictional submarine in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and named after another USS Nautilus that served with distinction in World War II. Nautilus was authorized in 1951 and launched in 1954. Because her nuclear propulsion allowed her to remain submerged far longer than diesel-electric submarines, she broke many records in her first years of operation, and traveled to locations previously beyond the limits of submarines in operation. She revealed a number of limitations in her design and construction. This information was used to improve subsequent submarines. Nautilus was decommissioned in 1980 and designated a National Historic Landmark in 1982. The submarine has been preserved as a submarine museum in Groton, Connecticut, where the vessel receives some 250,000 visitors a year. Planning and construction. In July 1951, the United States Congress authorized the construction of a nuclear-powered submarine for the U.S. Navy, which was planned and personally supervised by Captain Hyman G. Rickover, USN, known as the "Father of the Nuclear Navy." On 12 December 1951, the U.S. Department of the Navy announced that the submarine would be called Nautilus, the fourth U.S. Navy vessel officially so named. The boat carried the hull number SSN-571. The Nautilus benefited from the GAPI improvements to the American Gato, Palau, and Tench-class submarines. Nautilus's keel was laid at General Dynamics Electric Boat Division in Groton, Connecticut by Harry S. Truman on 14 June 1952. She was christened on 21 January 1954 and launched into the Thames River, sponsored by Mamie Eisenhower. Nautilus was commissioned on 30 September 1954, under the command of Commander Eugene P. Wilkinson, USN. Nautilus was powered by the submarine thermal reactor, later redesignated the S-2W reactor, a pressurized water reactor produced for the U.S. Navy by Westinghouse Electric Corporation. Bettis Atomic Power Laboratory, operated by Westinghouse, developed the basic reactor plant design used in Nautilus after being given the assignment on 31 December 1947 to design a nuclear power plant for a submarine. Nuclear power had the crucial advantage in submarine propulsion because it is a zero-emission process that consumes no air. This design is the basis for nearly all of the U.S. nuclear-powered submarine and surface combat ships, and was adapted by other countries for naval nuclear propulsion. The first actual prototype was constructed and tested by the Argonne National Laboratory in 1953 at the S-1W facility, part of the National Reactor Testing Station in Idaho. Nautilus's ship's patch was designed by the Walt Disney Company, and her wardroom currently displays a set of tableware made of zirconium, as the reactor core was partly made of zirconium. Underway on nuclear power. Following her commissioning, Nautilus remained dockside for further construction and testing. At 11 a.m. on 17 January 1955 she put to sea for the first time and signaled her historic message, underway on nuclear power. On 10 May, she headed south for shakedown. Submerged throughout, she traveled 1,100 nautical miles from New London to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and covered 1,200 nautical miles in less than 90 hours. At the time, this was the longest submerged cruise by a submarine and at the highest sustained speed ever recorded. From 1955 to 1957, Nautilus continued to be used to investigate the effects of increased submerged speeds and endurance. The improvements rendered the progress made in anti-submarine warfare during World War II virtually obsolete. Radar and anti-submarine aircraft, which had proved crucial in defeating submarines during the war, proved ineffective against a vessel able to quickly move out of an area, change depth quickly, and stay submerged for very long periods. On the 4th of February 1957, Nautilus logged her 60,000th nautical mile, matching the endurance of her namesake, the fictional Nautilus described in Jules Verne's novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. In May, she departed for the Pacific coast to participate in coastal exercises and the fleet exercise, Operation Home Run, which acquainted units of the Pacific Fleet with the capabilities of nuclear submarines. Nautilus returned to New London, Connecticut, on the 21st of July and departed again on the 19th of August for her first voyage of 1,200 nautical miles under polar pack ice. Thereafter, she headed for the eastern Atlantic to participate in NATO exercises and conduct a tour of various British and French ports where she was inspected by defense personnel of those countries. She arrived back at New London on the 28th of October, underwent upkeep, and then conducted coastal operations until the spring. Operation Sunshine, under the North Pole in response to the nuclear ICBM threat posed by Sputnik. President Eisenhower ordered the U.S. Navy to attempt a submarine transit of the North Pole to gain credibility for the soon-to-come SLBM weapons system. On the 25th of April 1958, Nautilus was underway again for the West Coast, now commanded by Commander William R. Anderson, USN. Stopping at San Diego, San Francisco, and Seattle, she began her history-making polar transit, Operation Sunshine, as she departed the latter port on the 9th of June. On the 19th of June she entered the Chukchi Sea, but was turned back by deep drift ice in those shallow waters. On the 28th of June she arrived at Pearl Harbor to await better ice conditions. By the 23rd of July 1958 her wait was over and she set a course northward. She submerged in the Barrow Sea Valley on the 1st of August and on the 3rd of August, at 2,315 she became the first watercraft to reach the geographic North Pole. The ability to navigate at extreme latitudes and without surfacing was enabled by the technology of the North American Aviation N6A1 inertial navigation system, a naval modification of the N6A used in the Navajo cruise missile. It had been installed on Nautilus and Skate after initial sea trials on Compass Island in 1957. For the North Pole, she continued on and after 96 hours and 1,590 nautical miles under the ice, surfaced northeast of Greenland. Having completed the first successful submerged voyage around the North Pole, the technical details of this mission were planned by scientists from the Naval Electronics Laboratory, including Drive Waldo Leon, who accompanied Nautilus as chief scientist and ice pilot. Navigation beneath the Arctic ice sheet was difficult. Above 85 degrees north, both magnetic compasses and normal gyrocompasses become inaccurate. A special gyrocompass built by Sperry Rand was installed shortly before the journey. There was a risk that the submarine would become disoriented beneath the ice and that the crew would have to play longitude roulette. Commander Anderson had considered using torpedoes to blow a hole in the ice if the submarine needed to surface. The most difficult part of the journey was in the Bering Strait. The ice extended as much as 60 feet below sea level. During the initial attempt to go through the Bering Strait, there was insufficient room between the ice and the sea bottom. During the second, successful attempt to pass through the Bering Passage, the submarine passed through a known channel close to Alaska. The trip beneath the ice cap was an important boost to America, as the Soviets had recently launched Sputnik, but had no nuclear submarine of their own. During the address announcing the journey, the president mentioned that one day nuclear cargo submarines might use the route for trade. As Nautilus proceeded south from Greenland, a helicopter airlifted Commander Anderson to connect with transport to Washington, D.C. At a White House ceremony on the 8th of August, President Eisenhower presented him with the Legion of Merit and announced that the crew had earned a Presidential Unit Citation. At her next port of call, the Isle of Portland, England, she received the Unit Citation, the first ever issued in peacetime, from American Ambassador J. H. Whitney, and then crossed the Atlantic, reaching New London, Connecticut on the 29th of October. For the remainder of the year, Nautilus operated from her home port of New London. Operational history: following fleet exercises in early 1959, Nautilus entered the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Maine, for her first complete overhaul. Overhaul was followed by refresher training, and on the 24th of October she departed New London for her first deployment with the 6th Fleet in the Mediterranean Sea, returning to her home port the 16th of December. Nautilus spent most of her career assigned to Submarine 10 at State Pier in New London, Connecticut. The squadron commander was stationed aboard US Fulton, a submarine tender also stationed at State Pier. Nautilus and other submarines in the squadron made the home tied up alongside the tender, where they received preventive maintenance and, if necessary, repairs from the well-equipped Fulton and her crew of machinists, millwrights, and other craftsmen. Nautilus operated in the Atlantic, conducting evaluation tests for ASW improvements, participating in NATO exercises, and, during October 1962, in the naval quarantine of Cuba, until she headed east again for a 2-month Mediterranean tour in August 1963. On her return she joined in fleet exercises until entering the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard for her second overhaul the 17th of January 1964. On the 2nd of May 1966, Nautilus returned to her home port to resume operations with the Atlantic Fleet, and at some point around that month, logged her 300,000th nautical mile underway. For the next year and a quarter she conducted special operations for Submarine, and then in August 1967, returned to Portsmouth for another year's stay. During an exercise in 1966, she collided with the aircraft carrier US Essex on the 10th of November, while diving shallow. Following repairs in Portsmouth, she conducted exercises off the southeastern seaboard. She returned to New London in December 1968 and operated as a unit of Submarine Squadron 10 for most of the remainder of her career. In the spring of 1979, Nautilus set out from Groton, Connecticut on her final voyage under the command of Richard A. Riddle. She reached Mare Island Naval Shipyard of Vallejo, California on the 26th of May 1979, her last day underway. She was decommissioned and stricken from the Naval Vessel Register on the 3rd of March 1980. Noise toward the end of its service, the hull and sail of Nautilus vibrated sufficiently that sonar became ineffective at more than 4 knots speed. As noise generation is extremely undesirable in submarines, this made the vessel vulnerable to detection. Lessons learned from this problem were applied to later nuclear submarines. Awards and Commendations. Presidential Unit Citation for outstanding achievement in completing the first voyage in history across the top of the world, by cruising under the Arctic ice cap from the Bering Strait to the Greenland Sea. During the period the 22nd of July 1958 to the 5th of August 1958, USS Nautilus, the world's first atomic-powered ship, added to her list of historic achievements by crossing the Arctic Ocean from the Bering Sea to the Greenland Sea, passing submerged beneath the geographic North Pole. This voyage opens the possibility of a new commercial seaway, a northwest passage between the major oceans of the world. Nuclear-powered cargo submarines may, in the future, use this route to the advantage of world trade. The skill, professional competency and courage of the officers and crew of Nautilus were in keeping with the highest traditions of the armed forces of the United States and the pioneering spirit which has always characterized our country. To commemorate the first submerged voyage under the North Pole, all Nautilus crew members who made the voyage may wear a Presidential Unit Citation ribbon with a special clasp in the form of a gold block letter N. Museum. Nautilus was designated a National Historic Landmark by the United States Secretary of the Interior on the 20th of May 1982. She was named as the official state ship of Connecticut in 1983. Following an extensive conversion at Mare Island Naval Shipyard, Nautilus was towed back to Groton, Connecticut, under the command of Captain John Allman, arriving on 6 July 1985. On the 11th of April 1986, Nautilus opened to the public as part of the Submarine Force Library and Museum. Nautilus now serves as a museum of submarine history operated by the Naval History and Heritage Command. The ship underwent a 5-month preservation in 2002 at the Electric Boat Division of General Dynamics, at a cost of approximately $4.7 million. Nautilus attracts some 250,000 visitors annually to her present berth near Naval Submarine Base New London. Nautilus celebrated the 50th anniversary of her commissioning on the 30th of September 2004 with a ceremony that included a speech from Vice Admiral Eugene P. Wilkinson, the first commanding officer of Nautilus, and a designation of the ship as an American Nuclear Society National Nuclear Landmark. Visitors may tour the forward 2 compartments, with guidance from an automated system. Despite similar alterations to exhibit the engineering spaces, tours after the control room are not permitted due to safety and security concerns.